What happens when church and cool collide? That's a question our guest attempts to answer in his book, Hipster Christianity. Brett McCracken is managing editor of Biola University's Biola magazine, and his writings are also featured regularly in Christianity Today and Relevant magazine. So let's welcome Brett. Good to have you here, Brett.
Oh, good to be here, Ron.
And this is your first time in the Greater Toronto area. So from California, so welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Now, the title, it really grabbed my attention for sure when I saw that, Hipster Christianity. And we've got to ask the question everyone's wondering too, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, it's sort of generally about cool Christianity and what that is, what that means when churches and Christians become cool or try to be hip. The term hipster is sort of the term these days used for the modern incarnation of hippies or countercultural young people who are into fashion and kind of against the grain and against the mainstream. So I've noticed in the last 10 years just this trend of Christian hipsters, young people who maybe grew up in evangelical Christian culture who are beginning to rebel in a lot of ways and kind of dressing fashionably and looking like any other cool young hipster. And so the book is kind of just looking at this subculture of young Christian hipsters and then broadly kind of what that means for the church and for cool Christianity.
So, so can Christianity be cool?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the big question that I'm asking in the book is can it be cool, and what do we mean when we're saying cool?
Yeah.
If by cool we're talking about being trendy and kind of wearing the right clothes and saying the right things that fit the current cultural cool zeitgeist, then I don't know if it's all that good of a fit with Christianity. If we're talking about cool and more of the, that's a great thing. I really admire that. That's cool.
Right.
Then maybe it is. Of course, Christianity is cool in that sense.
Well, I want to explore a little bit more about that and some of your observations. But I noticed that you had mentioned in the book that you wrote a few of these chapters while you were in Oxford, England, at a guest writer at the historic home of C.S. Lewis.
That's right.
What did that mean to you?
Oh, it was amazing. It was such a blessing to be there. And I wrote 2 chapters there. I was there for about a week. And I was in his room. I wrote at his desk. And it was just inspiring because C.S. Lewis is a writer that I kind of aspired to be, someone that spoke to the culture in an intelligent way that was both coming from a place of love for the church and not criticism, but he was a pretty sharp, critical writer too, and just very insightful, and he wrote stuff that lasted. And I sort of wanted to make Hipster Christianity a book that was about the current zeitgeist and about the current scene, but also had issues and rose certain important questions that'll be important to ask, for many years down the road.
It's a neat experience, I'm sure, for you.
Yeah.
Now, those who judge a book by its cover might just say, "Oh, this guy's just out to bash anyone who's trying to be, relevant and contemporary," and they might just judge it that way. What would you say to them?
I would say that's not what I'm trying to do, and I can see why people would think that, because I am critical of some things in the book, and I do think that there are ways that the church has tried to accommodate itself to cool that have been negative, and they're leading us down a wrong path. And so in one sense, the book is trying to call the church out for those things, but it's all an effort to veer us back on course, and it's all from a deep love for the church. I'm someone that grew up in Christianity and just loves the faith and cares for it enough to see where I think it's going off track a little bit.
Yeah. Now, you have the first section of the book is about kind of the history of the collision of cool and Christianity. And maybe you can hit some of those historical highlights that you cover in the book.
Yeah, I think the history of cool Christianity, it's not all that long. I kind of point back to the mid-20th century as where it started, maybe with the post-war emphasis on youth culture and all these evangelical parachurch organizations like the Billy Graham Youth for Christ sort of thing, and youth specialties, and all these organizations that started to really hone in on the youth. And the broader culture in the 60s was one of youth culture. Suddenly it was this big force to be reckoned with, both in marketing and advertising and everything. And I think the church began to see that as well. And maybe they were viewing themselves as losing the youth a little bit. They were more interested in the Beatles and rock music or whatever. So the origins of hip Christianity came from that moment where there was a renewed emphasis on the youth. And along that time in the 70s, early 70s, late 60s, the whole Jesus People movement, where hippies were converting to Christianity, and especially in Southern California and eventually throughout America. And I think that moment kind of was the catalyst for cool Christianity. Christian rock music was born out of that movement. And I think from that point on, we sort of have this consistent focus on making Christianity relevant and hip and appealing to the youth culture.
Now, it hasn't been all bad, because
No.
there has been a lot of young people that genuinely, were attracted to that kind of presentation,
Right.
and made decisions for Christ, and made lasting
Certainly.
decisions as well. So, what's how do you find that balance? That, I guess that's really where you
Yeah.
try to get to in the book. Is it's not. I'm not saying it's bad, but and what ways perhaps have some churches or presentations gone a little too far in your estimation?
Yeah, I think it's a hard balance, because on one hand we do have to be culturally relevant, and we have to contextualize our presentation of the gospel to meet whatever context we're in. And so we do have to find ways to be relevant to the youth, but I think we've become a little extreme in some of our methods, and we've come to the point where some churches look so similar to the rest of the world, both in just the music and you have churches that are showing like really kind of dicey films, and clips from TV shows and referencing pop culture, and you have all this technology and like text during the sermon, text in your questions, and not that any of that is necessarily bad, but it's just church is becoming this experience that doesn't appear to be all that different from what you're experiencing in the rest of your week. And I just feel like Christianity, in some sense, needs to have a set apartness, and we need to focus a little bit more on the message of the gospel rather than kind of dressing it up in the accoutrements of cool so much.
So there's a risk, I guess, of the theology being skewed, just in the trappings of trying to get the message packaged in
Right.
such a way and marketed in a way.
Yeah, and it comes from this just deep sense of marketing, and which has kind of been a part of Christianity for the last 2 decades. The seeker-sensitive movement has sort of played a part in this, just really focusing on the audience and kind of what the audience wants and what do they want and how can we fit Christianity to meet their desires. And I think that to some extent that's okay, but it becomes dangerous when you begin to downplay the parts of Christianity that aren't so appealing. Whenever you're marketing a product, you usually lead with the easy stuff and the appealing things and kind of try to hide or downplay the difficult things. In Christianity's case, denying yourself and giving of yourself and taking up your cross, those sorts of things. So I feel like when you're really trying to market Christianity and meet the audience where they are, you might be attracting them, but what are you attracting them to? Is the Christianity that they're being brought into the Christianity that they will stick with and that will transform their life?
So there are a number of these kind of churches out there, and some seem to be doing a great work. Some maybe you've seen some problems that have arisen as a result of them. Are there might be some of the symptoms of years of this kind of emphasis?
I think one of the things that I think is a big problem with churches that are too hip or too cool is, for one thing, they usually tend to be pretty homogenous in the age demographic. These hipster churches usually are 90% young people, and you don't have too many older people in the church. And I think that can be a negative thing, to have no diversity of age. And because naturally, if you have a church that is is very hip and appealing to the young people, it's not going to be so appealing to the 60-year-old, people in the congregation. And so I think that's an issue. And I just think that it can be alienating to people that come in to the church who aren't hip or who don't look the right way. If you go into a church where everyone else, you look around and everyone is so fashionable and so trendy looking, you're naturally going to feel a little bit self-conscious. And I just don't think that church is a place where we should feel that way. It should feel welcoming, and you shouldn't go in and want to leave because you don't feel cool enough.
Mm-hmm. So then you point out some of the issues like that in a lot more detail in the book. And then you also point to some solutions. So you don't just leave us with the problems, but you say, well, here are some possible solutions to consider. What might be the key areas that we can solve this?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the very core level, I would just say try to divert more of your attention to the message and making sure that you're preaching, you're teaching a deep, rich gospel that has because the gospel is always going to be appealing. It's a transformative thing that for centuries, for millennia, has been transforming lives. So to feel like that's not enough and to want to dress it up in all these ways, I think it belies a lack of confidence that isn't appealing to anyone.
Not watered down.
Yeah. So I think just you still have to pay attention in some ways to the packaging and the presentation, but don't let that take precedence over making sure that you're having deep preaching and teaching that engages people and focuses on discipleship and making disciples in a real deep way.
That's good. And you have I just want to read a little portion here, because you mentioned that you think Christianity is cool. You say, it's not that I don't think Christianity is cool. On the contrary, I think it's the coolest thing ever. It is eternal and life-changing in the world of waste and quick fixes. It's the answer to everything and everyone, for wanderers, laborers, lovers, poets, slaves, villains, heroes, hipsters, movers, doers, and dancers, and everyone else under the sun. Jesus Christ is the answer. So, with that definition, would you consider yourself a Christian hipster? You think it's cool?
I think Christianity is cool in the sense that it is the answer for the world, and for whatever anyone's looking for, it is going to be the thing that will ultimately be the answer. And I think that's the coolest thing, of anything. So, am I a Christian hipster? Probably in some senses, but it's not because I want to be fashionable or trendy to the current culture. It's because I believe in a faith that has transcended every passing trend and every fad. And our culture moves so fast and it's so disposable, and everything trendy today will be passé tomorrow. But the gospel is something that has lasted, and as long as we cling to that, I think that we'll be in good shape. Yeah,
that sounds good to me. So just as we wrap up here, what do you want people to take away from the book and even this short conversation we've had? What's the bottom line for you?
I think the bottom line is just this idea of having more confidence in the gospel itself and what that means, both as a person and for a community and for the world. And don't feel that you have to dress it up so much and make it cool and make it hip, because if we just live it authentically and love people and really extend the gospel in a real biblical way, that is going to be cool and that is going to be appealing, and that's going to bring in people and keep them engaged in the church.
Good stuff, Brett. There's got to be a balance, and it seems like a lot of things in life just come down to, okay, there's an extreme here and there's an extreme over here, and somewhere in the middle is where God resides with the balance, and He can try to bring us there, so that you have the balance of the powerful message and the unchanging truth of the gospel with something that's going to speak to someone today. And so I appreciate you helping us find the center here, Brett. The book again is Hipster Christianity, and I'm sure it's available in a lot of Christian bookstores or Amazon.com and that kind of thing. And so thank you, Brett, for popping up here to Canada, and God bless you in your ongoing work there at Biola University, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right.